the transport vessel. Harmony's Edge drifted through the void between star systems, its hull gleaming silver against the cosmic backdrop. Inside the passenger quarters, various alien species mingled in the common areas, their conversations creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that would have sounded like chaos to untrained ears. In the corner of the main lounge, a small figure sat curled up in an oversized chair, appearing almost lost among the cushions. Elena Vasquez looked every bit the part of a fragile human civilian. Her slight frame barely filled out the simple gray jumpsuit she wore, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail that emphasized her youthful features. To the casual observer, she seemed like just another human refugee fleeing the ongoing conflicts in the Outer Rim territories. The Vorthak delegation occupied the center of the lounge, their reptilian forms imposing even while seated. Their leader, Commander Zektar, stood nearly 3 meters tall when fully upright, his scaled hide bearing the distinctive crimson markings of a high-ranking military officer. His golden eyes surveyed the other passengers with barely concealed disdain. "It never ceases to amaze me," Zektar rumbled to his subordinates, his voice carrying clearly across the lounge. "How the Galactic Council continues to grant full membership status to such inferior species." His gaze lingered meaningfully on Elena's corner. The Etherian ambassador, Lysandra, shifted her crystalline form with a sound like wind chimes. "Commander, surely you do not mean to disparage our fellow passengers. The humans have proven themselves capable of—" "Capable of what?" Zektar interrupted, his mandibles clicking in amusement. "Looking pitiful? The human species is soft, weak, and utterly unsuited for the realities of galactic civilization. They lack the physical prowess of my people, the mental acuity of the Etherians, or even the basic survival instincts of the Corellian traders." Elena shifted slightly in her chair, her fingers unconsciously tracing the edge of a small datapad. To the untrained eye, it appeared she was simply nervous about the loud conversation. In reality, she was calculating distances, exit routes, and potential improvised weapons within her immediate vicinity. Old habits died hard. A young Corellian merchant named Thexip bounded over to Elena's corner, his feline features expressing genuine concern. "Please, do not let the commander's words trouble you, small human. Many of us do not share his narrow views." Elena offered a shy smile that reached her warm brown eyes. "Thank you. I'm not bothered by talk like that. People are entitled to their opinions." Her voice was soft, almost musical, with none of the harsh edges one might expect from someone who had spent the better part of a decade in active combat zones. She had perfected this persona over months of careful practice, and it served her well in her current assignment. "You are very gracious," Thexip purred. "May I ask what brings you to the Kepler station? It is quite far from human space." "I'm meeting my cousin there," Elena replied, her cover story rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. "She's been working as a communications specialist for one of the trading companies. I'm hoping to find work there too." What she didn't mention was that her cousin was actually Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force, and that Elena herself was Lieutenant Elena Vasquez, one of the most decorated special operations soldiers in human history. Her current mission was classified at the highest levels, involving intelligence gathering on Vorthak military capabilities in the neutral zone. The transport shuddered slightly as it dropped out of hyperspace, and Captain Mordesh's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. The Tentarayan captain's multiple vocal cords created a harmonious announcement. "Attention passengers and crew. We have arrived at the Kepler station. Docking procedures will begin shortly. Please ensure all personal belongings are secured and prepare for artificial gravity fluctuations during the docking process." Elena gathered her few possessions into a worn travel bag. The bag contained clothes, personal items, and hidden within a false bottom, several pieces of highly advanced military equipment that would be completely unrecognizable to most galactic species. Humans had a talent for miniaturization that often surprised their alien allies. As the passengers began making their way toward the docking bay, Elena found herself walking behind the Vorthak delegation. Commander Zektar was speaking in low tones to one of his officers, but Elena's enhanced hearing modifications allowed her to pick up every word. "The weapons shipment should arrive within the next standard week," Zektar was saying. "Our contacts on Kepler Station have confirmed the storage facility is prepared. Once we have the new plasma rifles, we can begin the next phase of operations against the human colonies." Elena's expression remained perfectly neutral, though internally she filed away every detail. This was exactly the type of intelligence that command needed. The Vorthaks were supposedly observing a ceasefire with human territories, but clearly they had other plans. "What about the council inspectors?" asked one of Zektar's subordinates. "They suspect nothing. As far as the Galactic Council is concerned, we are simply conducting routine military exercises in our own space. The humans are too weak to challenge us, even if they discovered our true intentions." The docking process completed with barely a tremor, and the airlock doors hissed open to reveal Kepler Station's bustling marketplace. The station was a massive structure built into a hollowed-out asteroid and serving as a neutral trading hub for dozens of species. The main concourse stretched for kilometers, with shops, restaurants, and services catering to every imaginable need. Elena followed the crowd into the station, maintaining her role as a nervous civilian while her trained eyes cataloged security positions, emergency exits, and potential surveillance equipment. Kepler Station was officially neutral territory, but everyone knew that various intelligence agencies operated freely within its corridors. The Vorthak delegation split up as soon as they cleared customs, with Zektar heading toward the high-security sectors where government officials and military contractors conducted business. Elena made a mental note to explore those areas later, but for now, she needed to establish her cover identity. She made her way to the civilian quarters section, where she had booked a small apartment for her stay. The room was spartanly furnished but clean, with a viewport that offered a view of the asteroid's rocky interior. Elena activated the room's privacy screen and began unpacking her belongings with careful precision. Hidden in the false bottom of her bag were items that would have caused quite a stir if discovered during customs inspection. A military-grade neural interface that looked like an ordinary earpiece. Micro cameras no larger than pinheads. A personal shield generator disguised as a medical device for managing anxiety. And most importantly, a quantum communication device that would allow her to stay in contact with command regardless of local jamming attempts. Elena activated the comm device and transmitted a brief status update using a code that would appear as random data packets to any monitoring systems. Message sent, she changed into civilian clothes and prepared to venture into the station's social areas. The evening crowd in the main concourse was diverse and lively. Street vendors sold exotic foods from a dozen different worlds, while musicians from various species created an eclectic soundscape. Elena purchased a simple meal from a human-operated food stall and found a seat at one of the common dining areas. She had been eating for only a few minutes when Thexip, the friendly Carillion from the transport, approached her table. "Elena, what fortune to encounter you again so soon. May I join you?" "Of course," Elena replied with a warm smile. "How are you settling into the station?" "Very well, thank you. I have already made contact with several potential business partners. The opportunities here are quite remarkable." Thexip's ears twitched with excitement. "And yourself? Have you been able to reach your cousin?" "Not yet," Elena said, maintaining her cover story. "She's been off shift, but we're supposed to meet tomorrow morning." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the station's main information display. A crowd was gathering around what appeared to be a news broadcast. Elena could hear fragments of excited conversation in multiple languages. "What do you think that's about?" she asked Thexip, who had better hearing than most species. "Something about attacks on human colonies in the Outer Rim," Thexip replied, his expression growing concerned. "It sounds quite serious." Elena felt a chill run down her spine, though she kept her expression neutral. Any attacks on human colonies could be related to the weapons shipment that Zektar had mentioned. She needed more information. "Should we go see what's happening?" she asked, playing the part of a concerned civilian. Together, they made their way through the crowd until they could see the main display clearly. The news report was being transmitted from the Galactic News Network, and the anchor was a well-known Etherian journalist whose crystalline features reflected the severity of the situation. Confirmed reports of coordinated attacks on 3 human agricultural colonies in the Rigel sector. The attacks appear to have been carried out using advanced plasma weaponry, though the identity of the attackers remains unknown. Casualty reports are still coming in, but early estimates suggest hundreds of civilians may have been killed or wounded. Elena's hands clenched involuntarily, though she quickly relaxed them. The colonies mentioned were all civilian settlements with minimal defensive capabilities. If the Vorthax were responsible, they were targeting innocents to test their new weapons. "This is terrible," Thexip whispered. "Who would attack defenseless farmers?" "I don't know," Elena replied quietly. "But I hope they find whoever did this." The crowd began to disperse as the news report moved on to other topics. Elena and Thexip returned to their table, though the mood had become somber. They finished their meal in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Later that evening, Elena returned to her quarters and activated her communication device. She needed to report what she had learned about the weapons shipment and its possible connection to the colony attacks. However, as she began composing her message, her enhanced hearing picked up footsteps in the corridor outside her door. The footsteps paused directly outside her room. Elena silently moved to the wall beside the door and listened carefully. She could hear at least 2 individuals, and their breathing patterns suggested they were larger than human standard. Possibly Vorthak. After several tense minutes, the footsteps moved away. Elena waited another half-hour before carefully opening her door and checking the corridor. It was empty, but she noticed scuff marks on the floor that hadn't been there earlier. Someone had definitely been conducting surveillance on her room. Elena closed the door and activated additional security measures. If the Vorthax suspected she was more than she appeared to be, her mission had just become significantly more dangerous. She needed to be even more careful about maintaining her cover while gathering the intelligence that command required. She spent the rest of the evening reviewing her mission parameters and planning her next moves. Tomorrow, she would need to make contact with her handler and begin the delicate process of infiltrating Vorthak operations on the station, all while maintaining the facade of being a harmless, delicate civilian looking for work. Elena smiled grimly to herself as she prepared for sleep. The Vorthax had no idea what they were dealing with. Humans might appear weak and soft to alien eyes, but appearances could be very deceiving. Elena had learned that lesson well during her years of service, and she was about to teach it to anyone who threatened human civilians. The next day would bring new challenges, but Elena Vasquez was ready for whatever the galaxy might throw at her. After all, they had no idea that the delicate girl was actually one of humanity's most lethal weapons. The morning shift change on Kepler Station brought with it the familiar sounds of commerce and daily life. Elena had risen early, her military training making it impossible to sleep past the standard wake-up time she had maintained for over a decade. She performed a series of stretching exercises that appeared to be simple flexibility routines but were actually designed to keep her combat reflexes sharp. After dressing in another modest civilian outfit, Elena made her way to the station's communications center. Her cover story required her to attempt contact with her supposed cousin, and the public terminals would give her a chance to observe the station's security protocols without arousing suspicion. The communications center was moderately busy, with various species conducting business throughout the galaxy. Elena selected a terminal in the back corner that offered good sightlines to the entrances, while appearing isolated enough for a private conversation. She initiated a connection to the Terran Defense Force administrative offices, routing it through several civilian channels to make it appear like a routine family call. After a few minutes of apparently failed connection attempts, a familiar face appeared on the screen. "Elena!" Commander Sarah Chen's voice carried just the right amount of surprised delight. "I was wondering when you'd finally make it to Kepler Station." "Hi, Sarah," Elena replied with a genuine smile. "Sorry I'm a day late. The transport had some delays in hyperspace." To any observers, they appeared to be cousins catching up after a long separation. In reality, they were using a complex code developed by Terran intelligence to exchange critical information about Elena's mission. "How was the journey?" Sarah asked, which in their code meant, "What intelligence have you gathered?" "Interesting, fellow passengers," Elena replied. "That business conference delegation seemed very excited about their upcoming product launches." Translation: Vorthak military personnel discussed weapons shipments. Sarah's expression tightened slightly. "Product launches can be so unpredictable these days, especially with all the market instability in the outer sectors." Message received. The colony attacks are confirmed to be connected. They continued their conversation for several more minutes, exchanging mission updates disguised as family news. Elena learned that 3 more human colonies had reported suspicious activity in their vicinity, and that Terran Command suspected a coordinated campaign was underway. As Elena ended the call, she noticed a familiar figure across the communications center. Thexip was at one of the terminals, apparently conducting his own business. However, Elena's enhanced peripheral vision caught movement behind a partition wall that shouldn't have been there. Someone was conducting surveillance on the Carillion merchant. Elena gathered her belongings and left the communications center, but instead of returning to her quarters, she took a circuitous route through the station's shopping district. Her training had taught her to recognize when she was being followed, and she quickly confirmed that at least 2 individuals were maintaining surveillance on her movements. Rather than confront them directly, Elena decided to use their attention to her advantage. She spent the next several hours behaving exactly like the civilian she was pretending to be, browsing shops, purchasing basic supplies, and even stopping for a leisurely lunch at a cafe that catered to human tastes. During lunch, she overheard a conversation at the next table that made her blood run cold. "The test results from the colonies exceeded expectations," a voice was saying in accented Standard Galactic. "The new plasma rifle design penetrates human defensive shields like they were paper." Elena carefully angled her position to get a better look at the speakers without appearing obvious. 2 beings in hooded robes sat hunched over data tablets, their features mostly concealed. However, she could see enough scaled skin and elongated fingers to confirm they were Vorthaks. "Excellent," replied the second speaker. "Commander Zektar will be pleased. How soon can we begin full production?" "The manufacturing facility on Zerion Prime is already retooling their production lines. We should have the first full batch ready within 2 standard weeks. After that, we can begin the real offensive against human space." Elena forced herself to continue eating normally while her mind raced. The Vorthaks weren't just testing weapons on civilian colonies. They were preparing for a full-scale war against humanity, and they were doing it all from supposedly neutral territory. After the 2 conspirators left, Elena paid her bill and followed them at a discreet distance. They led her through increasingly secluded sections of the station, areas where legitimate businesses gave way to the gray market establishments that existed in the shadowy corners of galactic commerce. The pair eventually entered a nondescript facility marked only with a small sign reading Import-Export Services, Licensed Neutral Zone Operation. Elena made note of the location and serial numbers on the facility's registration plaques before returning to the main concourse. Her enhanced memory systems had recorded everything she needed, but confirming the details would require a closer look at the facility. That meant surveillance work, which was risky but necessary. Elena spent the rest of the day establishing a pattern of routine civilian behavior while secretly scouting the import-export facility. The building was larger than it appeared from the front, extending deep into the asteroid's interior. Loading docks on the rear level suggested they handled significant cargo volumes, despite the small public frontage. Security appeared light but professional. A few visible guards, standard electronic locks, and surveillance cameras positioned to cover the obvious approaches. However, Elena's experienced eye caught details that others would miss. Subtle sensor arrays, reinforced building materials, and sight lines that suggested additional concealed defenses. As evening approached, Elena made her way to a small restaurant near the facility. The establishment catered to station workers and maintained a view of the import-export building's loading areas. Elena selected a table near the window and ordered dinner while maintaining casual observation of the target. Her patience was rewarded when a large cargo transport landed at the facility's private dock. Elena watched through the restaurant window as Vorthak workers began unloading sealed containers under heavy guard. The containers were unmarked, but their handling suggested they contained something valuable and dangerous. Elena was so focused on the cargo operation that she almost missed the approach of another patron. Thexip slid into the seat across from her, his feline features expressing concern. "Elena, my friend, I believe we both may be in significant danger." Elena's hand moved instinctively toward a concealed weapon before she caught herself. "What do you mean, Thexip?" "I have been watching you, as you have been watching others. We are both being followed by Vorthak intelligence operatives. I think they suspect we are not what we claim to be." Elena studied the Carillian's expression carefully. Either he was an excellent actor, or he was genuinely concerned about their situation. "What makes you think that?" "Because," Thexip said quietly, "I am not actually a merchant. I am Agent Thexip Ka of Carillian Intelligence Service, and I have been tracking Vorthak weapons smuggling operations for the past 6 months." Elena felt a moment of surprise, though she kept her expression neutral. The friendly merchant had been an intelligence operative all along. "That's quite an accusation to make about the Vorthaks. They're supposed to be honoring the ceasefire agreements. As are you supposed to be a simple civilian, looking for work?" Thexip replied with a knowing look. "Your surveillance techniques are quite good, but they follow human military doctrine very closely." Elena weighed her options quickly. Maintaining her cover was important. But if Thexip truly was an ally, cooperation might be more valuable than secrecy. "What exactly do you think you know about me?" "I know that you move like a soldier, observe like an intelligence operative, and carry yourself with the confidence of someone who has seen considerable combat. I also know that the Terran Defense Force has been infiltrating suspected Vorthak operations throughout the neutral zone." Elena made her decision. "If what you're saying is true, and we're both intelligence operatives, then perhaps we should consider sharing information." "I was hoping you would say that," Thexip purred. "What I have discovered is most disturbing. The Vorthaks are not simply smuggling weapons. They are preparing for a massive offensive against human space, using neutral territory as their staging ground." "What kind of evidence do you have?" Elena asked. Thexip produced a small data chip and slid it across the table. "Shipping manifests, communication intercepts, and financial records." The Vorthax have been purchasing weapons components from multiple sources and assembling them in hidden facilities throughout the neutral zone. The facility we are watching is just one of many. Elena palmed the data chip smoothly. How many facilities are we talking about? At least 12, possibly more. All disguised as legitimate businesses, all processing massive amounts of military hardware. If they complete their preparations, they will have the capability to strike at human colonies throughout the Outer Rim simultaneously. The implications were staggering. A coordinated Vorthak offensive could devastate human settlements before the Terran Defense Force could mount an effective response. Elena felt the familiar cold anger that came with understanding the true scope of a threat to innocent civilians. "What's your extraction plan?" Elena asked, falling into professional terminology. "I was supposed to rendezvous with a Carillion intelligence vessel in 3 days, but given the level of surveillance we're under, I'm not certain I'll be able to reach the rendezvous point safely." Elena nodded. "What about the weapons shipment that arrived tonight?" "According to my intelligence, those containers hold the final components for a new type of plasma rifle, something that can penetrate standard defensive shields used by human colonies. They plan to field test them on 3 more settlements before beginning their main offensive." Elena felt her carefully maintained civilian demeanor crack slightly. "When?" "Within the next 48 hours. My sources suggest they're targeting agricultural colonies in the Vega sector. Minimal defenses, maximum psychological impact." Elena stood up abruptly. "I need to contact my handlers immediately." "Elena, wait," Thexip called softly. "There's something else. I believe they suspect you specifically. Earlier today, I overheard Commander Zektar discussing a human intelligence operative posing as a civilian. They may be planning to move against you tonight." Elena felt her combat instincts fully engage for the first time since arriving at the station. "How much time do we have?" "Unknown, but I suggest we not return to our individual quarters tonight." Elena's mind raced through tactical options. She needed to transmit the intelligence about the planned attacks to command, but she also needed to survive long enough for that information to be useful. If the Vorthax were planning to move against her, they would likely try to eliminate her quietly to avoid causing an incident on neutral territory. "There's a maintenance section in the lower levels," Elena said. "Minimal surveillance, multiple exit routes. Can you make it there without being followed?" "I believe so. My species has certain advantages in crowded environments." "Good. I'll need about 2 hours to transmit this intelligence and arrange for emergency extraction. After that, we may need to take direct action to prevent those weapons from reaching their targets." Thexip's ears twitched with surprise. "Direct action? Elena, there are only 2 of us against an entire Vorthak intelligence cell. That seems inadvisable." Elena smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the station, the expression held no warmth at all. It was the smile of someone who had faced impossible odds before and survived. "Thexip, I think it's time I told you what my real job description entails." As they left the restaurant separately, Elena felt the familiar transformation occurring within her consciousness. The careful civilian facade was dropping away, replaced by the cold professional mindset that had carried her through dozens of successful missions behind enemy lines. The Vorthax thought they were hunting a harmless human civilian. They were about to discover just how wrong they could be. The maintenance tunnels beneath Kepler Station hummed with the constant background noise of environmental systems and power conduits. Elena moved through the narrow passages with fluid precision, her civilian clothes replaced by form-fitting tactical gear that had been hidden within her seemingly innocent luggage. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the shy, delicate woman who had spent 2 days playing the part of a lost civilian. In her place stood Lieutenant Elena Vasquez, Special Operations soldier, whose compact frame now radiated deadly competence. Every movement was economical and purposeful, honed by years of training in environments far more hostile than an asteroid trading station. Elena's enhanced neural interface projected tactical data directly into her field of vision as she navigated toward the rendezvous point. Station schematics overlaid her natural sight, marking security checkpoints, guard rotations, and potential escape routes. The technology was among humanity's most closely guarded secrets, giving their special forces capabilities that most alien species couldn't imagine. She reached the designated maintenance junction 7 minutes early and took position with clear sight lines to all approaches. When Thexip arrived, moving with the casual grace of his species, Elena noticed he too had undergone something of a transformation. The friendly merchant's demeanor had been replaced by professional alertness. "Your intelligence was accurate," Elena whispered as the Carillion settled into position. "I've transmitted the weapons data to command, but response time will be at least 18 hours. The colonies will be attacked long before help arrives." "What do you propose we do?" Thexip asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected her answer. Elena activated a small holographic projector, displaying a three-dimensional map of the import-export facility. "We stopped the weapons shipment ourselves. According to your intelligence, those containers hold the final components. Without them, the Vorthax can't field test their new rifles, which means they can't proceed with the main offensive. Elena, that facility is heavily defended. Even with both our skill sets, the odds of success are minimal." Elena's smile was cold and calculating. "Thexip, you still don't understand what you're working with. Let me properly introduce myself. Lieutenant Elena Vasquez, 3rd Special Operations Battalion, Terran Defense Force. Personal combat record: 47 successful deep infiltration missions, 8 facility destructions, and over 200 enemy combatants neutralized." Thexip's ears flattened against his skull in surprise. "You're a battle specialist. The classification is Special Operations Warfare Expert. But yes, humans have been fighting wars for our entire evolutionary history. We've gotten very good at it." Elena began marking positions on the holographic display. "The Vorthax think they're dealing with a weak species because we prefer diplomacy to conflict. They're about to learn the difference between preference and capability." Elena's analysis of the facility was methodical and thorough. She identified 17 separate security measures, calculated guard rotation patterns, and marked the optimal entry and extraction routes. Her planning was the product of decades of human military development, refined through countless conflicts. "The cargo is stored in the lower vault," Elena explained, highlighting the relevant section. "Heavily secured, but the Vorthax designed their defenses against conventional assault. They're not prepared for someone with my particular skill set." "What about the guards? There are at least 20 Vorthax soldiers in that facility." 23, according to my count, plus 6 automated defense systems and a backup security team on standby. Elena's tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing weather conditions. Standard operating procedure for a facility of this type. Thexip studied the human with growing amazement. "You're actually confident we can succeed." "I'm confident I can succeed. You're going to provide overwatch and intelligence support. Your species has superior hearing and night vision, which makes you an excellent spotter. But the direct action will be my responsibility." Elena began removing items from her gear pack, each piece of equipment designed for maximum efficiency in minimal space. A personal stealth field generator that could bend light around her for short periods, micro-explosive charges no larger than coins, but capable of cutting through reinforced bulkheads, a neural disruptor that could incapacitate most alien species without permanent harm. And finally, her personal weapon, a compact energy rifle that appeared deceptively simple, but represented the pinnacle of human military technology. "The plan is straightforward," Elena continued. "I infiltrate the facility, neutralize the guards non-lethally when possible, destroy the weapons components, and extract before reinforcements arrive. Total operation time should be under 30 minutes. What about the inevitable investigation? This will cause a significant diplomatic incident. Elena's expression hardened. Those weapons are designed to kill human civilians. Diplomatic concerns are secondary to preventing genocide. As they prepared to leave the maintenance tunnels, Elena performed a final equipment check with military precision. Every item had been tested, every contingency planned for. She had conducted similar operations dozens of times, though never with so much depending on the outcome. Thexip, I need you to understand something. Once we begin this operation, there's no going back. If you have any doubts about working with a human combat specialist, now is the time to voice them. The Carillian's whiskers twitched in what Elena had learned was an expression of determination. My people have always honored those who protect the innocent. I will stand with you, Elena Vasquez. They made their way through the station's service corridors toward the import-export facility. Elena's enhanced senses tracked every sound, every movement, every potential threat. Her neural interface calculated probabilities and tactical options in real time, presenting her with a constant stream of strategic data. As they approached the target, Elena activated her personal stealth field. The device wrapped light around her body, making her effectively invisible to most forms of visual detection. To Thexip, she simply seemed to fade from existence. I'm going silent, Elena whispered. Her voice the last thing Thexip heard before she vanished completely. Elena approached the facility's perimeter with predatory patience. The external guards were positioned exactly where her reconnaissance had indicated, their attention focused outward rather than on potential infiltration routes. Elena's training had taught her that most species, including Vorthax, thought in terms of direct assault rather than surgical infiltration. The first guard never knew what happened. Elena's neural disruptor delivered a precisely calibrated pulse that induced immediate unconsciousness without causing permanent damage. The Vorthax simply collapsed at his post, appearing to any casual observer to have fallen asleep. Elena's stealth field flickered as she moved, the energy requirements forcing her to manage its use carefully. She disabled 3 more guards in rapid succession, each neutralization silent and efficient. Her movements were a lethal dance honed by years of practice. The facility's electronic locks presented no challenge to someone trained in Terran's special operations techniques. Elena's equipment included bypass codes for most common security systems, plus adaptive algorithms that could crack unfamiliar encryptions in real time. Inside the facility, Elena encountered the true scope of the Vorthax operation. The building was much larger than its external appearance suggested, with multiple levels extending deep into the asteroid. Weapons components were stacked in organized rows, each container marked with shipping codes that revealed their ultimate destinations. Elena photographed everything with micro cameras while moving toward the lower vault. The intelligence value was enormous, but her primary mission remained the destruction of the new plasma rifle components. The lower vault was protected by the facility's most sophisticated defenses: automated sentries, energy barriers, and pressure-sensitive flooring designed to detect intrusion. Elena smiled grimly as she studied the setup. The Vorthax had designed impressive defenses, but they had designed them to stop conventional attacks. Elena's approach was anything but conventional. Instead of triggering the main defenses, she used micro-explosive charges to create her own entry point through the vault's floor. The charges were precisely calculated to cut through the reinforced material without causing structural damage that might alert the automated systems. Inside the vault, Elena found herself surrounded by enough military hardware to equip a small army. The new plasma rifle components were exactly where Thexip's intelligence had indicated, stored in specialized containers designed to preserve their sensitive electronics. Elena began placing charges with surgical precision. The explosives were designed to destroy the weapon's components completely while minimizing collateral damage. She had 30 charges, each one positioned to maximum effect. As she worked, Elena's enhanced hearing detected movement above. The guard rotations were changing, which meant her time window was narrowing. She accelerated her pace while maintaining absolute precision in the placement of each charge. The final explosive was positioned when alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Elena's infiltration had finally been detected, though whether by security cameras or a missed guard rotation she couldn't determine. What mattered now was extraction. Elena activated the charge's timer, 3 minutes to detonation. More than enough time to escape, but the facility's guards would now be actively hunting for her. She burst through the vault's main door as Vorthak's soldiers converged from multiple directions. Elena's stealth field was depleted, leaving her visible but still highly mobile. Her energy rifle came up in a smooth motion, training and instinct guiding her movements. The engagement was brief but decisive. Elena's weapon fired precisely aimed stun bolts that dropped Vorthak's soldiers without permanent injury. Her movement was fluid and unpredictable, making her a nearly impossible target for her larger, slower opponents. Every shot found its mark. Every step positioned her for maximum tactical advantage. Commander Zektar appeared in the facility's main corridor, his reptilian features twisted with rage. "Human, you will answer for this violation of neutral territory." "I'm answering for the murder of innocent colonists," Elena replied, her weapon trained on the Vorthak commander. "Your weapons testing killed hundreds of civilians. They were weak, inferior. The galaxy will be better when humanity is eliminated." Elena's expression remained coldly professional. "That's where you're wrong. Humanity isn't weak. We just prefer not to show our strength unless forced to." Zektar lunged forward with surprising speed, his clawed hands reaching for Elena's throat. The Vorthak commander was nearly twice her size and mass, with natural weapons that could tear through most materials. Elena sidestepped the attack with fluid grace, using Zektar's momentum against him. Her counterattack was a combination of martial arts techniques that no alien species had ever seen. Human combat systems, developed through millennia of warfare and refined into deadly precision. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. Zektar found himself on the floor, thoroughly subdued, while Elena stood over him with her weapon ready. "Humans developed something called martial arts," Elena explained conversationally. "It's the result of several thousand years of people figuring out how to fight bigger, stronger opponents. You might want to research it." The facility's charges detonated in sequence, each explosion precisely timed and placed. The weapons components were completely destroyed, along with most of the facility's stored military hardware. Elena's mission was complete. Elena activated her communication device as she exited the facility. "Command, this is Serpent 7. Primary objective completed. Weapons components destroyed, intelligence gathered, facility neutralized." "Copy, Serpent 7. Extraction team inbound. Outstanding work." Thexip emerged from his overwatch position, his feline features expressing profound amazement. "Elena, that was extraordinary. I have never seen combat efficiency like that." "Standard Special Operations Protocol," Elena replied, though she allowed herself a small smile. "Humans have been fighting wars for a very long time. We've learned to be good at it when necessary." As they waited for extraction, Elena reflected on the mission's success. The Vorthak weapons program had been disrupted, their plans for attacking human colonies derailed. Commander Zektar and his surviving personnel would face charges before a Galactic Council tribunal. Most importantly, the galaxy had received a subtle but clear message. Humanity might prefer diplomacy, but they were more than capable of defending themselves when threatened. Later, as Elena sat aboard the extraction vessel removing her tactical gear, Thexip approached with obvious curiosity. Elena, may I ask you something? When you were pretending to be a civilian, how much of that was actually acting? Elena considered the question seriously. Most of it was real. I do prefer peaceful solutions. I'd rather help someone than fight them. I genuinely enjoy meeting new people and learning about other cultures. But if someone threatens innocent people, if they plan to murder civilians to test their weapons, then they discover that humans can be something else entirely. Elena's expression grew hard. We didn't become the dominant species on our planet by being gentle. We became dominant by being adaptable, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. Elena looked out at the stars streaming past the viewport. Somewhere out there were human colonies full of families, farmers, children, and ordinary people living their lives in peace. They would continue to live in peace, protected by people like Elena, who understood that sometimes the greatest kindness was being capable of terrible violence. The delicate girl had completed her mission. The galaxy was a little bit safer, and the Vorthax had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating humanity. After all, the most dangerous predators rarely look threatening until they need to be.